What is up, my friends? You are very welcome along to Monday night's Late Night Agenda, where, as always, we are here to answer your questions and talk about the Reds. We're going to be trying to figure out the 11, of course, for the game against Marseille on Wednesday. We're going to be giving you the details of why we've come up with the stream title we have tonight. It's not one that I want to be the case, but as always, I can only come on and be honest with you guys about what we hear, and sometimes what we hear and what we want, they're not always the same. So we'll discuss that tonight, where it's coming from. We'll talk about potential reinforcements, although that's unlikely in January. We'll talk about Xavi Alonso and how I do believe he is being potentially groomed for the summer. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. We'll talk about what others have had to say on Arno. We'll talk about what the former referees had to say about Cody Gakpo. A little bit about Mickey van de Ven. We'll, of course, discuss the confirmation today that Mark A is now a Crystal Palace player. And lots more. Look, I'm not happy with the way we've had to word tonight's stream. And I sat down with Connor earlier on and we talked about it, and the only thing that we can do is be honest, you know. I'd love to come on here and keep saying, will he be gone tomorrow? Will he be gone the next day? But I can only tell you what we hear from credible people. And today, well, we're going to back up what others have said, because we're our own information. We're reaching out to other content creators, people in the media business. We can only tell you what we believe to be the case, and what we do believe to be the case at the minute is that the job is steady for the time being. That's it. That's all I can say to you. And look, I will go into more detail on it, but will he be gone in the summer? Yes, like we said earlier on, we do believe that's the case, but the club are very reticent to make a change mid-season, rightly or wrongly. We'll all have our own opinion on that. You know mine. Wrongly is my opinion. But tonight we'll tell you where that's come from and why we think it's the case. As always, though, folks, we do appreciate your thoughts, so keep them coming in. We have a game coming up on Wednesday, a massive game. The preview for that went out a little bit earlier on. I hope you had a chance to watch it, and if you did, let me know your thoughts on the predicted 11 that I'd gone with for the game. I'll walk you through it in a little while as well. Oscar's World said, happy 40th birthday, Mum Melissa. Love from your boys. Happy 40th birthday to your mum, mate. Happy 40th birthday indeed. Hope she had a wonderful day, and no doubt being spoiled rotten by her family. So hope you're well as well, Oscar, and thank you, mate, for dropping in, and we all wish your mum a happy birthday. So look, today I spent some time, as I always do, reaching out to people to hear what people have said. And a couple of things caught my eye, and then I reached out. So one of the first things that I seen was Liverpool's stance on Arne Slot in the Echo. And it said, the Echo understands that Slot will feel secure in his job for the foreseeable. Jurgen Klopp's early notification to Fenway Sports Group of his desire to leave at the end of the season in 23-24 gave the Liverpool hierarchy months to first determine and then recruit his successor, a rare luxury in the modern game. They aren't going to give up on Slot at the first sign of difficulty, especially midway through a season. And it's the latter part of that I want to focus on, the midway through the season part. Because my information remains the same, that longer term he will be gone unless an absolute miracle happens. But then I read a piece that was credited to David Lynch from our friends at Anfield Index, and it tallies exactly what we've been told and what our friends at Anfield Index are saying as well. So this again is an excerpt from that. David Lynch, speaking on Anfield Index, said they clearly want to get to the end of the season with Slot if they can. They don't want to make a mid-season managerial change, because what they do get, what do you get as an interim? It would clearly be better to make the managerial change in the summer. Now, I disagree with David Lynch on it clearly being better. I mean, look, we'll all have our own opinions on when we think the change should be made. But I can't come on and not be honest with you guys. I'm not going to come on here and make out like he could be gone tomorrow when we're hearing that it's unlikely that that's going to be the case. Of course, everything is changeable in football, but it certainly feels like the club's appetite right now is to get through the season with Arne and then reevaluate in the summer. And that reevaluation, in my opinion, may come too late. It could be a risky exercise. I think it is a risky exercise in continuing with him, but that's someone says don't believe the Echo. I'm not believing the Echo. If you listen to anything I'm saying to you, mate, I'm telling you that 3-4 different people, different sources that I've spoken to today, people whose opinion that I do hold in high regard, have all tallied with the same thing. And that's where we're at. You know me at this point. I'm not leading off believing the Echo for anything. but I can only tell you what people who I trust in are telling me, and other people that I speak to about the situation. We're all getting the same feedback. Rightly or wrongly, the club at this moment in time plan to get through the rest of the season with Arna. I'm not saying we have to be happy about it, because look, I ain't. But you know, that's the lay of the land. I'm not happy about it. I think it's the wrong decision, but ultimately that is where we're at. And there's nothing to say that if results start to go the wrong way, they might not take action a bit sooner. I mean, like I've said, I do think the next couple of weeks are going to be huge with regards to our season anyway. Marseille away on Wednesday night, it's going to be a difficult game. We'll talk about that. But I wish I could deliver better news on the managerial front for the short term, because you know my belief. My belief is that sacking him now is the far better play, bringing an interim and steady the ship. But, you know, it doesn't help when certain narratives are then being put out there into the media again. And we'll talk about what Jamie Carragher and others have had to say for a while. But again, I just want to be upfront, be honest with you guys, as I always am. David said, "Hi Craig, do you think we make top four? This performances aren't good enough. I hope you're good." Well, the saving grace could be that it will be top five, like we've said. Do I think that's good enough? No. Do I think we make top five? More likely than not, yeah. Yeah, I do. I don't really think that that's an acceptable desire or tally for the season, but that is where I think we're at. Yeah. Like, as I said, I've reached out to my friends at Anfield Index, whose opinions as well I hold in high regard. They're people who, you know, behind the scenes we've always gotten on with. We've always, you know, had honest, frank conversations with each other. And I was speaking with one of the guys involved with the running of that today. And again, their information tallies with ours, that at this moment in time, at least publicly, the club are saying that they are backing Slot for now. After that, look, we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, what I won't do is come on here and tell you a pack of lies, because who does that benefit? I'm annoyed by this. I'm not happy that this is the situation. I think it's the wrong situation, but that's where we're at. Any transfer news, Craig? Would you take Ordonez? Would you play Gakpo centre and Hugo on the left? So, any news on transfers? A few bits and pieces that we will get stuck into. How much of it's realistic or not, and how much of it I actually think is going to happen. In January, not much. No, I actually think we're going to be frustrated in January. Would I take Joel Ordonez? Yes, but I do also agree with the former coach at Bruges that he's not fully developed yet. He's not like Premier League ready to just drop in and be a guaranteed success. But it is a player that I would take a longer term view to, yes, as coming in, and would be a really good option. And the last part, Hugo centre, or Hugo on the left, Gakpo centre. At this moment in time, I don't think Cody Gakpo should be starting games for Liverpool, because I don't think he's been playing well enough to start games. So if I can just walk you through my predicted 11 for the Marseille game, or the 11 that I should say that I would put out. I had Alisson in goal, Frimpong at right back, Kanade and Van Dijk because I've no other choice. And I mean that sincerely. If Gomez was a few weeks further along, you know, I'd probably push to want Gomez to play ahead of Kanade. But right now, we don't have an option. So it's Kanade, Van Dijk. I've gone Robbo on the left for the experience factor away in a very hostile atmosphere. You know, we're going to be going over to a ground that is known to be, you know, vociferous, right, supportive of the club and loud. So I want calm, composed Andy Robertson in that environment when the result is really important for us. We've got to go over there to get something. In midfield then, I've gone for a deeper line two of Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis McAllister. I've put Szoboszlai on the right, Wirtz in the centre, and Jones on the left, and then Hugo Ekitike up top. And the reason that I've gone for Jones on the left over Gakpo is the fight factor. And I thought back to the last game at Goodison, and Jones standing up and not being overawed by the occasion, or basically not being a shrinking violet. It's not maybe the perfect 11. It's not an 11 that I would think you have to agree with, but that's the type of mindset that I'm looking at going into this game, because I don't trust the manager. I don't trust the coaching side of it. So I have to start looking at the players and thinking, right, who do we think can stand up to be counted? And I will put Jones in that category. Have we heard that Hughes and Edwards have blocked Gay? No. Look, I can't tell you why we didn't move for Mark Gay in January. I don't know the answer to that question. We discussed it last night, and I, told you about the club feeling like they had a guaranteed money coming in for Elliott, and that money's not coming in. Has that changed the opinion? I don't know. People are going to talk about the wages, and look, I've nothing to prove this, but I would absolutely guarantee that in my mind, I feel Mark Gay would have taken less money to come and play at Liverpool. But we did make the play from in January, and somebody else did, and you, I, and every other fan who feels frustrated about that can't change it. These are club decisions that aren't in fans' control. And you'll see the wording of tonight's stream title. You can see from what I mean about Liverpool fans paying to go on, because that's exactly what many of us are feeling right now, is pain, frustration. And in my prediction, I also obviously do a preview as part of it. And I can't in good conscience go and predict a Liverpool victory over in Marseille, because I don't expect that we will win over in Marseille. It's possible, but I don't think, based off drawing a home to Burnley, that we're going to go over there and beat Marseille in their own ground. It's possible, but it's going to take far improved performance. Now on that, I want to talk about Jamie Carragher and some of his comments today for a second, because he's been talking about the game. Where are we? 1 second. So Carragher, on Liverpool's form, has said this: "The concerning thing over this run is that Liverpool are playing with the handbrake on. I don't think that was the case at the weekend against Burnley. I think Liverpool played really well, and sometimes you have to accept you don't get the result that you really deserve, which Liverpool did." So look, looking at that on its own, I can't really disagree with Jamie there. And I said it to you guys as well. First 45, I think we played well. And even when they got the equaliser, I thought we would go on to win the game. And you can say that that one could go in the unlucky pile. I would say that's a fair enough assessment. But that unlucky pile is quite big. And how many more excuses are we going to make for utterly not being able to win a game against a newly promoted side like Burnley? But in this context on its own, I do think Carragher has some merit. But like I said to you, it's death by 1,000 cuts for me. And one more draw is how I describe it. Anyway, Jamie goes on to say, "I don't think this game in isolation reflects the last couple of months. I think the dilemma for every manager, in every team, in every league, is balance between defence and attack. The balance was not right at the start of the season. It was too much in the attacking sense, and Liverpool were leaving themselves open at the back. Arne Slot has stopped that. He's stopped the defeats. The balance has almost gone too far one way, where the energy and pace isn't there. He's done that to stop the end-to-end games, to make the team stronger defensively. That's the conundrum for everybody, getting the balance right between attack and defence, and he hasn't got that decision right. Maybe Mohamed Salah will change it when he's back." Now, I don't know if that last part was a bit of trolling from Cara about Mohamed Salah changing it when he comes back or not, because we all know what the situation was before he went to the AFCON. So we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. But it's stuff like that that will allow Arne to extend and stay out for the rest of the season. Because it's hard for me as a fan to sit here and say that what Jamie Carragher said there doesn't have merit, because a lot of it does have merit. But again, I think you can't keep taking everything in isolation. And to be fair to Jamie, he does talk about the greater context of the season. But look, ultimately, we've been nowhere near good enough when we've drawn 7 out of 12 games. So we're on a wing and a prayer here and a hope. And that's what really pisses me off about this, is that we keep hearing about hope and expectations and being unlucky and the manager figuring it out and bit by bit. Ultimately, it hasn't been good enough and the season hasn't been good enough. And I feel like we're just going to have to endure this until the season's over. Hope for the best, but endure is the word that I'm going to keep using, because I do think there will be games where we play better. Yeah, of course, we're going to start winning games of football. But ultimately, I still stand over the fact that I think he's gone in the summer. We'll talk about Xavi Alonso and his future in a little bit, because I do think it will come down to us and maybe one other club there for him. So we'll talk about that. Jordan said, "Evening all, missed the game on Saturday. Always watch the game when I can, but it's just so painful." Saturday was a particularly frustrating one, Jordan, because like Jamie Carragher said, And I said in the first half, I actually thought we did look a bit better. We looked a bit sharper. We moved the ball a bit quicker. But the part that I would say that Jamie hasn't really mentioned there is that at the first sign of things not going our way again, we aren't able to get over the line. So it's all very well and good saying we had 32 shots and 11 on target or whatever, we're talking about your XGs, but at the end of the day, it's a point against Burnley, and it was a point against Leeds, and it was a point against Fulham, and it was a point against Sunderland. And these are all points that just aren't good enough. So yeah, that's where we're at. Also, want to just quickly say as well, we won't be continuing our project with Big Up moving forward. The easiest way that I can describe this to everybody, to be fair about it to everybody, is we listen to the feedback from our community. And it would have been a very... I have to be careful about what I say. It would have been a very easy decision for us to take the financial side, stick our fingers in their ears and not listen to feedback. But we do listen to the feedback of our community, and the feedback of our community is important. And we've decided to stop because of the feedback. We've always told you, for us here, it isn't about the money. It's never been about the money. It's about making things that are best for our community. And we listened to your feedback, and because of that, we informed them today that we won't be carrying on moving forward. So I just wanted to quickly let you guys know about that. And again, thank you all for your continued feedback, because it is always listened to and it does mean the world to us. So let's keep going. Stevie Boy said this means no Champions League next season. Well, let me ask that as a poll, Stevie Boy, because I think it's a good question to kick us off tonight. Right, so what I've asked is, do you fear for Champions League qualification if Slot stays? Let me just go back, actually fix one spelling error I have in that one. Yeah, so do you fear for Champions League qualification if Slot stays? Do you know what? I've got to say, Stevie Boy, for me, I think we'll get it because of the 5 thing. If it was just 4 teams, I really would worry. But because it looks like it's likely going to be 5 teams again, I think we'll scrape in. But that's nowhere near good enough for me. And it's nowhere near good enough for what we expected at the start of the season. Like, let's think about this logically. We are now 7 points or so behind Aston Villa in 3rd place. So we're talking about being in a battle with Manchester United, Chelsea, Newcastle, Brentford, if you want to say Brentford, and maybe 1 or 2 others, because it's a very congested league table. So whilst I said that the information that we'd heard tallies with the information that David Lynch, the Echo, Anfield Index have heard, it doesn't mean I agree with it. And I would disagree respectfully with some of what David Lynch has said and what some others have said about it being the right decision. I don't think it is the right decision, but again, like I said, we're in the opinions business and everyone's entitled to their opinion. I just think there's more headaches to come, and one good 45-minute performance against Burnley in a game we still drew isn't enough for me to think that things are going to be made better by Arna. Motorhome Dreamer said, I can see us slipping back, especially if United and Chelsea go on a run. Well, it's hard to know what to make or think about the United part of it, because, you know, if ever there was a game that you should be able to go into that dressing room and get a reaction from the players from as a new coach, it is a derby, right? So I don't really know what to expect from Manchester United for the remainder of the campaign. So it's hard to really gauge their form. With Newcastle, I think they will get better as the season goes on. I do. I do think they're going to be in the mix. You know, they've got Visa back as well. Obviously, he wasn't available start of the season. And I am concerned there. Chelsea, of course, they're going into the market now to look to bring in more additions to help push them on. So whilst I think we'll scrape in, I do also think it's a huge risk. And I think we would be better placed by bringing in an interim manager and firing Arne Slot. Particularly because I think if you even look at the people who are saying that the manager will be here till the end of the season, there's probably not too many that think he's going to go past that. And that's, to me, the saddest part of all of this, is because it feels like, again, we're going through another half a season where it's sort of being written off, but sort of isn't, because there's always hope. And hope is all we have right now, because I don't really feel confident. Does that feel fair to say? Like, do I think there's a world where Liverpool can win an FA Cup or Liverpool can win a Champions League? Well, I've witnessed 2005, so anything is possible. But do I feel like this team are heading towards winning those things? No, I don't. And I don't like being, I don't like feeling I have to say that, but I don't. Because I don't think it's over. I think the players still, some of them don't want to play for him. And I think the Salah situation will become an issue again. And I think nobody fears us. And that's another important thing. Like, Anfield isn't a fortress anymore. We all heard the reaction from the Liverpool fans inside Anfield at the end of the game. And that's a reaction that's not unique. That's how people feel. So either the owners are tone deaf and are backing their guy, or they genuinely think it's the right thing to not change managers mid-season. I don't know. Like, every club will look at this with their own unique eyes, and it's a difficult one to get a read on FSG's long-term plan for it, because we have had much of a... what am I looking to say? We don't have much of a sample size of having these questionable managerial decisions to make, because obviously with Jurgen, he announced he was going halfway through a season. But other than that, it was firing Roy Hodgson, which was so blatantly obvious at that point. And ironically, I say it's so blatantly obvious at that point. Yeah, here we are talking about a manager who has a less points per game ratio this season than Hodgson did when he was fired, which is insane. The revisionism and the acceptance of it from some people of the standards dropping, I just don't get. But like I said, there's no point me sitting here banging my head against a brick wall, screaming into a microphone every day. All the goodwill in the world, I can't change the owners' minds. So, let's keep going. FSG must be numb for sitting on them with their hands, said Corbyn. Look, it comes down to what you think, right? So, realistically, there's two ways to look at this. You think, better the devil you know, and you see out the season with the coach, which means you don't have a huge change middle of the season. And they might be looking at that and thinking that the likelihood of getting Champions League qualification is increased by keeping the manager that knows, that you know, and that has his staff in place. Or you can look at it from the other perspective, which is he's not good enough, fire him now, bring in an interim, or if Alonso's ready to come in permanently, let's say, bring that in. But again, we're making a leap there. So it comes down to those two things. Do you backslot to see out the season and just about get where you want to do and hope that he does something big? Or do you take the more drastic option, push the button now and bring in an interim? We've seen what other clubs have done. It seems like our club are going to sit tight and continue to, what I would say, is stick their fingers in their ears and say la 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 and hope that it all works out. And I've talked about hope and rolling the dice and how it's worked out for us over the years. It's never really ended well. So I don't expect this season to end well, unfortunately. Nexus said, if Slot finished second last season, he'd be sacked by now. If we miss Champions League, the board needs to be sacked. Love you, Craig. You never walk alone. Well, thank you, my man, for the kind words at the end of your post. Really means a lot. I'm with you. Like, we're talking about hypotheticals here. You know? Like, it's like me saying to myself, well, Craig, if you get up and run 10 miles every morning, you'll lose weight. I know exactly what to do. So saying if Arna wins a Champions League, it's possible because we're in it. But again, do I expect it to happen? Is it more likely than not likely? No, I don't think it is. And I think the decisions he's already made this year are one that's cost us a potential trophy by throwing it away. He's obviously thrown away the title defence. There is no denying that he's had some stuff to deal with, of course. The tragedy with Diogo, and we've had some changes in the squad. But I just amn't somebody that buys into this. The changes are enough of a reason. I don't believe that. I don't for 1 second, because I can show you so many other clubs who have made more changes and haven't yet had to see the fall off that we've seen. And the changes that we made were to better the team with higher quality players and record-breaking fees. So it's a bit difficult to sit here and feel sorry for the coach or like he's unlucky, because I don't believe he is unlucky. And I don't believe that the injuries are just bad luck either, like I've tried to say many times. That's where my head's at, and that's where I think we're at. It just looks like, for now, we're stuck. Vastuev said, "Love your content, mate. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. Do you want Slot to turn this around, or are you in a stage where you just want him gone?" It's a really fair question. And my answer is always, I want the club to do well. So, of course I want Slot to turn it around. Absolutely. Like, my interest is always for the betterment of the football club. It's not for my own selfish thoughts or desires or wants. I'll share my opinion, same as everybody else. But underneath, I want the club to be successful. And I don't think that Arna staying is going to make us that, from what we've seen. So, if he turns it around, I'm not going to sit here and be sad about us winning stuff. But I truly, truly sit here now, speaking from the heart, saying I don't believe and expect that he will turn it around. And I don't believe or expect that we will have a successful end to the season. Because again, for me, coming into this season, I was so optimistic. We all came in with huge belief and expectation of what was possible with the players we brought in. And for one reason or another, things have gone in the direction that they have. And I've heard so many excuses, so many reasons to gloss over the failures and not enough holding people to account. And quite frankly, I'm angry at the club. I'm angry that we're in this position. I'm angry that it feels like once again they're not doing what needs to be done and sitting on their hands, as someone said a moment ago, and rolling the dice. We did it with Arthur Mello. We did it with Ben Davies. We did it with Ozan Kabak. We've done it time and time before. And the season wasn't supposed to be about scraping Champions League football. Is there anyone in the chat, genuinely, hand on heart, who thinks we're going to win silverware this year? Because it's going to be either the FA Cup or the Champions League. That's it. And to be honest with you, and I'm not going to be flippant about it, winning the FA Cup for me isn't good enough. Not to say it's a successful season with what we've done. Any trophy is always better than no trophy. Of course it is. But an FA Cup isn't the Champions League. It's not a Premier League title. It's not something that's going to really move the needle. It's a trophy, and a trophy's a trophy. But I wanted one of the big ones this year. We all did. And I certainly wanted a better title defence than we've put forward. So, and to go all the way back around to your question, do I just want him gone? Well, I do want him gone. But if it meant I'm wrong and Liverpool win stuff, happy to be wrong. And I dare say I'm not on my own with that thought process. We're all Liverpool fans. We all want the club to do well. We all love the club. But I guess we all just have different ideas about measuring risk, perhaps. And FSG do seem very risk averse in some ways, but then again, in some other ways, they feel to me like they're constantly rolling the dice. Look at Chelsea. You can win a trophy with them, finish top 5 and still get sacked. 2 trophies, by the way. 2 trophies. Europa Conference League, Club World Cup. Brought in a fucking load of dough as well. Let's not forget. Over 100 million for winning that Club World Cup. And yeah, Maresca still gets the boot. Manchester United brought in Ruben Amorim, backed him, brought in players, stuck with the system of the frustration, fired him. Us, again, as some people say, it's not the Liverpool way to sack managers, and some people think that's, this is all going the right way and that we're doing things the right way. And I respect their opinion. I just greatly disagree with it. And right now I'm honestly feeling a bit disheartened as a Liverpool fan now, because this is not what we'd all built up our hopes for. And, I'm even I find that small things are annoying me now. Like, Virgil van Dijk came out after the game when it was the booing, and he said, "I don't like my fans booing." Now, I know it's such a simple thing when he said my fans, 99.9% means Liverpool fans, the home fans. But it's just things like that, to me, feel tone deaf to the actual pulse of the fan base. And for all the talk of standards and history and tradition and all this stuff, I don't get where's the attaboy for being the nice guy? You can still achieve your goals and do the right things. And Edwards and Hughes were supposed to be the ones who removed the emotion from decision making. And I ask you sincerely, removing the emotion, of which, of course, I'm very much a big bag of, removing the emotion from the decision and looking at it analytically and looking at the results and looking at what we've done, I don't even think there is an argument for keeping him on. Because there are so many records have been broken this season for the wrong reasons. And that's without his man management skills or lack of. That's without his development of younger players. So I think this praising of removing emotion from decision making is bullshit. And I think sometimes it's just a cop-out. Because the brave decision, I think, is to sack him. But it's also the right decision. Sitting on your hands and doing nothing, it seems like the easy decision. But again, that's where we're at for now. Chris Thorne, how are you, dude? After Gay going to City, I'm really fed up and won't be watching Liverpool on Wednesday. It's just too painful. No wonder John W. Henry wears glasses. So, it really hurt me today as a Liverpool fan, seeing Mark Gay holding up that jersey, talking about going to, the top club in England and all this other stuff. It hurt me as a Liverpool fan, thinking he should have been holding up a Liverpool shirt. And our club, for whatever reason, don't think we need to go out into the market and bring in a centre-back in January. Now look, whatever else you think, folks, pushing the managerial situation aside for 1 second, how can any club that claims to be ambitious look at our situation defensively and think it doesn't need to be addressed immediately? I'm trying not to get angry about it. I'm trying not to start ranting about it. But I find it difficult to believe that you really think we're going to have a successful season with two centre-backs, one of whom is probably pissing off and certainly has been up and down in form. Our captain is getting older and doesn't have the fear factor anymore that he used to carry for players. A defence that is still leaking goals and can't keep clean sheets, and no alternative or options or pressure to put on them. That's not the behaviour of winners. Look at what City have just done. They had injuries to Gvardiol and Diaz, and what do? They don't go out there and bring in a cheapskate replacement, some 5 million quid loan fee. They go out and they get an established English international and take it away from their rivals, i.e. us and potentially Arsenal. Same with Antoine Semenyo. They decide that they're short in attack and they go and attack the market again because they want to have a good season. And they want to make sure that the manager's delivering trophies. Our club, we're sitting here now on the 19th of January with no sign of anybody coming in for the here and now. And yes, young players brought in, and we'll talk about those young centre-backs a little bit later on. But how am I supposed to really believe that it's ambition? Because it isn't that there's a lack of, or it isn't that there isn't the players available. City have shown that. Chelsea have shown that by going and getting Xhaka from Ron. Others have shown that by doing bits and pieces in the market. It's getting back to me feeling like the cheapness is shining back through again. And the cheapness is being now disguised by saying biding their time on the manager. Like, decisions that are made at our football club outside of this summer, I can always track back to cheapness in one or two moves. And as much as I rightly praise the owners for the investment they put in the summer, it's no good half doing a job and not seeing it through. If we were sitting here now, second in the league, 3 points behind Arsenal, playing better football, but with this injury crisis, and they were saying they're going to hold fire, and Canada had signed a new deal, this might be a little bit different. But it isn't. Canada hasn't been pulling up any trees this season. And as we get closer to bye-bye time, it's only going to get worse. Gomez knows he's not wanted at the club because they tried to move him on in the summer. So we're asking players to go to the well for us that don't really have a future here. We've got a captain who seems to refuse to acknowledge the fans are unhappy with what we're seeing and keeps just coming out with buzzwords and phrases and keeps saying we work on the training ground, we have meetings, we say that we do all the right things. None of that means anything because we're still going out there and playing passive football. So I don't know what it's going to take for FSG to realise the fans are done with this manager. But if it has to be their bottom line getting hit, well, then that's going to be what it has to take if you don't get Champions League football. But again, how's that winning and who does that benefit? It's just, yeah, I'm a very disillusioned Liverpool fan at the minute, unfortunately. Scott Cunningham said Klopp in as new sporting director and Alonso in. Would I take that? Yes. But there's no way Klopp and Edwards are going to be in the same building working together again, in my humble opinion. But we don't even know, like, the people who are making the decisions at our football club, outside of FSG, just one ring down the ladder, or one rung down the ladder, their own contracts are up in 18 months. So there is no real guarantee of stability moving forward. Like, how many times have you seen Michael Edwards' name as an example linked with other high-profile roles in Saudi Arabia or other big clubs? Or these guys are supposed to be the best at what they do and the smartest guys in the market. I must be an idiot then, because I can't think how it's smart not getting a centre-back, let alone in the summer, but to not do it now, where there is still something to save in the season, or a DM to help out the defence, it just feels like stupidity. And I don't have another word for it. And when I read this thing yesterday from Paul Joyce, it broke my heart. And I'll read it out to you again, and it's not fully in context, and I'm not trying to say it is, but I am trying to show you that there is even an underlying narrative here. So Paul Joyce writes that Liverpool hoped that Mark A. would recognise the efforts that they'd made to sign him before the plug was pulled on deadline day, and in turn wait for them till the end of the season. Hoped. We'd hoped. What we didn't do was keep track of the situation, keep in touch, assure him that if something happens in January, we're there, we're ready. We want him, he's our guy. So we tried to pay 35 million for him, and it fell apart. Then we heard for the next few months that Liverpool plan on getting him in the summer, and Liverpool still hope to get him on a free. Well, clearly that communication mustn't have been great if they didn't know what was about to happen. Now, when they did see that Manchester City were mulling over a move, still no action. And then we wondered why. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is exactly the reason why, But the same journalist then goes to say that £35 million centre-back, that we tried to sign and we failed signing, well, he, in another segment, said Liverpool had banked on receiving 35 million from Aston Villa for Harvey Elliott this summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. Now, Paul Joyce doesn't link those two things, and I'm not trying to suggest he is trying to link those two things, but I am. I'm certainly linking them in my mind, that we had a £35 million centre-back ready to come in. Ironically, on the same day the Elliott deal was agreed, late in the window, last minute. We'd all asked and wondered why we left it so late to get a centre-back, right? We know we brought in Giovanni Leone, but we all did have this conversation about, if they really wanted Mark Gay so much, why did we leave it so late in the window? We may have our answer. Because the only way they wanted to make it work was by banking on the money for Elliott. Now, the Elliott money's gone tits up because he's not getting game time at Villa. And we could have gotten Gay for 20 million quid, but we didn't. Come on, I don't think I'm tinfoil hat stuff here to try to suggest that that's why. I don't know. Again, if you disagree, feel free. By all means, I'll, happy to debate back and forth, but that's kind of where my head's at now and the way I'm joining the dots. Nedge said, it'll be another big summer. Robbo likely gone. Maka, I think, goes. Kanade gone. Salah likely gone. Gomez plus numbers we're already short on. That's so let's look at it from that angle. Excuse me, for a minute. About it being a big summer. Because somebody said to me last night, well, Craig, let's say Alonso comes in and sticks to his preferred system. You need 5 or 6 centre-backs. So after having a summer where we just done a load of business and spent a load of money, you're right. We're looking at potentially another huge summer. Now, hear me out. If we're to believe that some of the fall off this year was because of the changeover of personnel, how am I not to believe as a fan that the same excuses will be trotted out next year if we spend money and there's failings again? That it will again come down to, well, it isn't the poor old gaffer's fault, it's too many changes. But if you're going to go down that route, you could have stopped some of that by bringing in some of the players now and bedding them in. So you don't have as many wholesale changes. Because you are right. We don't know what's happening with Andy Robertson's contract. It's up at the end of the year. We don't know what's happening with Ibrahim Konate's contract, although Sky seem to believe it's looking unlikely that he stays. Again, I'm going to tell you the conversation Roman Kemp was having with Kave Salako, which it doesn't look like Konate is going to sign a new deal at Liverpool. So on top of that, we have Alisson's contract up in 2027, Costa's contract up in 2027, Virgil and Mohamed Salah's contract up in 2027, one more year, sporting director, manager and CEO of football, same boat. So where the fuck is the long-term strategy thinking? Where is it? And who's making it? Because like this gentleman Edge has said, another big summer, another overhaul summer is also going to have the same excuse. So either the excuses we're getting now about the changes needing time to bed in is a bullshit excuse, or we're about to have another season of the same excuse next year if we have another summer under the same manager. I would argue that going in and bringing one or two of the players. Now remember, the sporting director is supposed to be the one that looks at the football vision of the club. So I would be thinking, why don't we bring in one or two of these guys now? Because they are available. We've seen the market. There are players that can be gotten. Why not get at least one or two of them in now? One, help us out numerically, because we are short now. We do have a lot of injuries. And two, again, ease the bedding in process. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about a World Cup year. So it's going to be short in summer anyway. So less time to work with the players. Less time for a new manager to get in and assess things. My argument would be, fire Arna, bring in an interim, let Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards go about their recruitment business as they do, and have some of these guys ready to go. And a new manager unveiled late in the season, but behind the scenes haven't already started the process of looking over the squad and looking at what needs to be done. And that's where I'm hoping Alonso will come in. Now we'll move on to talk more about Alonso in a bit, but I just want to go back into the chat. Awar Tank said, too much negativity currently. It's overwhelming. Gotta chill. Look, you're right about the too much negativity. You may think I'm pushing a lot of negativity, and if that's the case, no probs. But I would argue, mate, that the negativity is just real. So just chilling ain't going to solve jack shit. I would argue, and look, I know, and I've said it before, I understand and appreciate that we don't all view football in the same way, and we don't all let it dictate our moods in the same way. No problem with that whatsoever. But it's just wrong in my eyes. It's just wrong what's happening. And I don't think chilling is going to do anything about it. Because, again, you might say, well, we'll go again next season. The owners might say that. But what about the people who are spending their season ticket money, buying their kids, paying for the TV subscription, all this? We can't just emotionally check out for half a season and then switch it back on. You know, that's not how fandom works. It's not how it should ever work. So, look, maybe you feel a bit more calm about the situation, and that's grand. I've no problem with that, mate. You do you. But for me and for a few others, it is a stressful time right now, and it is a situation that feels negative. Thoughts from the Cove said, teams have had bad years, even good ones. Fully respect your right, your take, completely understand the frustration, but for me, I wouldn't make a change mid-year, next season at the soonest. And I respect that point, mate. I truly do. And thank you for respecting mine as well. I do. If you could humour me for a second, I'd just like to push back a little bit. So you said all teams have bad years, and that's absolutely true. Jurgen had them. It happens. But it's a little bit galling to take the bad year after we've broken the British transfer record twice. We are the defending champions who were coming into the season with a fear factor, and we're being spoken about by pundits far and wide as probably the favourites to go in along with maybe Arsenal. So you brought in all of these wonderful players. Your Wirtzes, your Isaks, your Ekatike, your Kirkes. You brought in these guys. Your Jeremy Frimpongs. And you're the defending champions. And then the bad season kicks in. It feels to me like a little bit more than just a bad formed season. It feels a bit deeper than that, because to me, the bad season started last season. And it started around March or April. And it's continued on into this season. Because outside of winning the league, which of course is great and we all appreciate, enjoyed, and are eternally grateful for, we lost the League Cup final because he was out-coached and we were out-fought. We went out of the FA Cup to Plymouth and we were knocked out of the Champions League in the first round. So it isn't just a bad season, in my opinion, mate. It's a bad season and a half, or a bad 1/3 of one season that's carried into another season. But again, respect your opinion, respect that you've come in, and just given your view, and thank you for that. But Craig, bringing an interim manager might get us the same results as keeping Slot to the end of the season. It's quite a gamble to me, in my opinion. Of course, and I definitely am sitting here necessarily saying there is a scientifically proven answer that says my way is the right way. Absolutely, bringing in an interim manager could go tits up as well. Absolutely. This is why we're having this conversation, though, right? Because at the end of it, though, it does feel as if we're kind of on the page that he's gone in the summer, right? So whether you think pulling the trigger mid-season or not is the right or wrong move, I fully respect that. But it feels like ultimately we're going to get to that point anyway. And if we lose on Wednesday night, which realistically is a possibility, we're going to have a knockout round game in the Champions League, home and away over 2 legs, which is 2 more games for us, just to get into the point of the season then where we won't have had the advantages from being in the top 8. So basically, it's at the very least a must-not-lose game on Wednesday, but probably a must-win game. Now, I don't know about everybody else, But I don't feel particularly confident going over to take on Marseille on Wednesday with the results they've been having versus the results we've been having and the uncertainty in the team. And if we go 1-0 down or the first bit of a pushback happens, we've seen this season that we don't really have the ability to turn it around and get over the line. We seem to kind of go into our shells a bit. So even at 2-0, we can't feel confident and comfortable. So look, I get what you're saying, and if people want the manager to stay on till the end of the year, I get that, and we'll ask it in a poll. So, do you fear for Champions League qualification if slot stays? 80% of people say yes, 20% of people said no. So, 1 second. One more option. Right, so when should FSG fire Arne Slot? At the end of the season, now, or he should keep his job? Because I think we're all on the same page, or a lot of us, that Arne ain't doing it and ain't cutting it. But like Nessie said, I do understand that there will be people who look at this, and even if they do believe he's not the right guy, they may think the sensible play is end of the season. I disagree, but I think that's the direction we're travelling in. And I think it will take it to get to a point where it is untenable and disastrous, and then you get fired before the end of the season, if he's to get fired then. So, again, I'm looking at potential upsides, and I'm thinking, well, what is the upside of him staying? Hypothetical scenario where he wins a trophy and turns it around. Yep. I said even at that, I don't feel we'll miss out on Champions League football. Even if he stays, I still think we'll get in because top 5 will do it. But I come back to what my goal was and what the aim should be for the season. And he hasn't met those and isn't meeting those. So for me, that in itself should be enough to remove a manager of their job. And the other part of it about the interim or the future, yes, you plan for it and you should be planning for it now. But ultimately, I think it should be pull the plaster off. Because let's say things keep being up and down and things keep being inconsistent for the remainder of the season. Can you imagine by the last month of the season how Liverpool fans are feeling at that point if, let's say, we're out of a Champions League and, you know, we don't make it to an FA Cup final? It's going to feel a very eerie, odd place inside Anfield. And it already is. Like, the atmosphere inside Anfield now is already not what everybody would want or expect when Liverpool are playing, because there is a sense of fear and frustration in the crowd, and annoyance as well. We're heavy metal fans and Slot is an opera singer. See, I don't know what Slot's trying to do. And that's part of my own frustration. Like, as Cara said, now it feels like we're playing with the handbrake on. So if we're to believe that we're playing with the handbrake on, that's to increase the defensive solidity. Well, surely we should be winning some more games, even if it is just by the odd goal. But with the handbrake on, we've still drawn 7 from 12. Now, at the start of the season, when we were playing the free-flowing, as Jamie said, all-out, balls-out attacking football, we won the first 5, and then that absolute fall off a cliff came. So, we're not even in the middle, because in the middle is about 1.5 points from the 3, losing 0, winning 3, drawing 1. So we've had more draws, 7. So I'd say still say we're below middle, and the points tally that he's put up is less than Hodgson when he got fired. and teams around us are getting stronger and better, and Alonso is available. There's just so many things that just make me feel like just get it done. Get Gerrard in for the few months and get it done. But anyway, on Alonso, I want to go to the Bayern Space account, which I refer back to quite a bit for a lot of this stuff. And they've posted something. Now, look, this is going to take some reading, so please do bear with me for a moment or two while I go through it. Said, following his departure from Real Madrid, Xabi Alonso held a phone call with Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, a figure who he has maintained a close and long-standing relationship with for years. The exchange was described as warm, reflective and respectful, and Rummenigge expressed genuine regret that Alonso's chapter in Madrid did not unfold as hoped, while once again underlining the esteem in which he continues to be held in Munich, not as a fleeting consideration, but as a figure Bayern Munich have admired for a long time. Rummenigge has long supported the idea of Alonso one day taking on an active role at Bayern, and during the conversation he made it unmistakably clear that the doors in Munich remain open, both now and in the future, should Alonso ever feel the moment is right. Xabi Alonso is said to have responded with appreciation and respect, fully aware of the standing he continues to enjoy inside the club. Internally at Bayern, the tone and wording of the call were analysed carefully, leading to the prevailing interpretation that Alonso's next step is unlikely to take him back to Germany in the immediate term. Instead, there is a growing belief that the trajectory is pointing toward the Premier League, with Liverpool and Manchester City viewed as the most realistic destinations. Liverpool is long understood to hold a special place in Alonso's heart, and even now the sense internally is that his personal preference leans in that direction. It's also worth noting that during this conversation, Alonso made clear that the decision to step away at this point was his as well. He told Karl-Heinz Rummenigge that managing certain dynamics within the squad had become increasingly difficult, and he felt this was the right moment to draw a line. The coming 6 months are viewed by Alonso as a deliberate mental rest, a period he intends to use to prepare himself fully for the Premier League. Most significantly, and in detail not previously known, Alonso indicated that firm assurances are already in place regarding a summer takeover, while deliberately withholding the identity of the club. In broader context, it is noted internally that during this time at Bayer Leverkusen, Alonso's contract contained release clauses for the clubs he previously represented, namely Real Madrid, Bayern Munich and Liverpool. Less discussed in that clause was a place for Manchester City, the only elite destination among them he never played. He visited the Etihad campus years ago, where he observed training under Pep Guardiola remains part of the internal context, with the relationship between the two dating back to the time together in Munich. Taken together, this leaves future succession scenario at Manchester City on the table. Internally, if the prevailing estimation continues, place Liverpool slightly ahead in his thinking. Nevertheless, inside, the mood is one of calm and composure, with respect fully intact between Alonso and Madrid. So that's what the Bayern Space account has said. Now, on the potential of Manchester City, I don't know how to feel about that one, because there are some unknowns there. He doesn't have the emotional connection to the club because he didn't play there, right? But then he does have the respect for Pep Guardiola from their time. But if Guardiola is not going to be there anyway, it would surely have to be that Liverpool don't come looking for him if he was to end up at Manchester City. So yeah, take from that what you will, excuse me. You got to give Slot more credit, bro. He hasn't done that bad this season. No, he has. He's done terribly. Or you're entitled to your opinion, but he's done terribly. And again, I'm not going to sit here and list off all the things that show how terribly he's done and the records he's broken. I've gone over it numerous times. But, you know, ultimately, how's the title defence going? Are we tucked away nicely in the safe positions at the top of the Champions League? Are we in the League Cup semi-finals? and we have a fourth round game of the FA Cup coming up. Fingers crossed. So no, mate, he hasn't done all right. He's done terribly. But yeah, on that Alonso thing anyway, I really, 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 really hope that the club are sounding out Alonso behind the scenes. Or Luis Enrique if they feel that he's not going to commit to a new deal at Paris Saint-Germain. But after seeing Manchester City fly in and take Marc Guéhi and Antoine Semenyo because of our inaction, I'd be a liar if I said I'm not a little bit concerned that they may be doing the same thing with regards to Pep. Because remember, Pep will plan his own departure from Manchester City. The club will know about it. When they go public with it, that's, up to them. So, to some extent, there's an advantage there if Pep's told them or have the conversations that, yeah, look, I am willing to step aside in the summer if you the guys feel you can get the right guy. That's where my head's at. And I'm concerned that if we're inactive again or don't show a clear desire for the coach, we could miss out. I wish my club could be in Liverpool's position. That's respectfully not my issue, though. I think from your image profile, bro, you're a Spurs fan, and with all due respect to Spurs, who are a very good club, the ambitions and aims for both of our teams at the start of the season were probably fairly different. Our aim was to try to win the Champions League or to retain the Premier League title, whereas Spurs' aim would be to, of course, try to win a trophy, as is always the case with every team. But realistically, weren't expecting to win the Premier League. Also, didn't go out there and break the British transfer record twice in one window, which we did for Isak and Wirtz, and yet we still failed miserably, or are failing miserably. So, I don't know, mate. My expectations and our expectations were a lot higher than perhaps Spurs. Like, they're different clubs with different histories, different traditions, and probably different places in their evolution. Flying Welshman 93 said we don't sign Guéhi for 20 million. Yet we'll probably have to spend a lot more for 2-3 centre backs in the summer. Madness. But also, remember again, sorry to go back to this point, but this season we're already talking about a lot of change. And that change may be leading to some of the disjointed performances. Well, if we're going to have to go into next summer and do another 5 or 6 changes, surely it's not impossible to imagine that the same scenario could happen if it is the changing of players that's the problem. And that's where I've always said I don't think that bringing in the players we did justifies how poor we've been and the form we've shown, because other clubs have made changes, more than us, some of them, but are better coached. It's the coaching that I think is letting us down this year. And the not signing Marc Guéhi thing is nothing short of a disgrace. Like, what message does it send as well? There's a couple of things that are happening this year that I don't like. One, I'm not seeing real pathways shown for young players into the first team. So what good is it going around getting up the best young talent if you're not going to show them a pathway through? Rio Engamoa has had nowhere near the minutes he should have had based on the squad options we have available in attack. We didn't replace Diaz because we didn't want to block the pathway for this kid. Well, Arna's doing a better job than anybody of blocking the pathway for Rio Engamoa. Fede Chiesa, again, you don't need me to go back over that scenario. It all just, again, comes back to piss poor man management, a manager that isn't really connecting with the fans, and players that seem to be confused. And one of those was Curtis Jones. And this was posted by a user on X called Sajad, Sajad, said, what is the position? It's the same position. Curtis looked very frustrated, like he didn't understand the instructions from Arne Slot. It's a matter of when, not if. And then there's a screenshot of Curtis Jones looking pretty confused as Arne is trying to explain something to him. So the players don't really know what they're being asked to do a lot of the time from this coach. And certainly it isn't leading to great performances and great results. So again, I feel like we're making a lot of excuses. And I don't like excuses. Especially when we spent what we have and have the quality that we have. Because we're a better team than we're seen. This one from James Smith. How are you, James? If you could get Bastoni and Schlotterbeck in the summer, would you sell Gomez and VVD? Having Leone and Nuyo and centre back as well as backups. I wouldn't sell VVD now. Because I would like to have that transitional season of Bastoni, Schlotterbeck, VVD there as well as Young Leone. And I think that would be quite cool for a year to have that. So yeah, I wouldn't. But I also wouldn't be selling VVD. You know, I do think his experience, I'd like to see a transitional year before VVD just stops and somebody else comes in and is then the leader of the defence. I'd like to see that eased in over a little bit of time. David said, best LFC channel. Can I say hi to Megan? Of course. Hello, Megan. How are we? Hope you're well. And thank you, David. It's very kind of you. Dean said, I'm watching this Premier League season and every game is so boring. Tell me which team's exciting. But respectfully, Dean, it's not up to me to tell you what teams are exciting or not. Do you think Arsenal fans at this moment care whether they're excited or not? Because they're sitting on top of the league. And if we were sitting on top of the league, 6 or 7 points clear, it'd be a lot easier to take not playing great football, mate. But we aren't. Again, all of this just feels like excuses. It's not a great entertaining season. Tell me who's playing entertaining football. Well, we're not. And that's all I care about, mate. You know, I don't give a shit about Man City, Arsenal, Manchester United, Everton, Spurs. I'm a Liverpool fan. I care about what's happening at my club. And my club certainly ain't playing entertaining football. And more often or more than that, we're not even in the right fucking league position. You know? Phil, thank you, bro. Appreciate you. We seem to have no fight after we conceded. So, do you know, sometimes, David, I find myself in positions where I have to contradict myself at times. I think we should have won the game against Burnley. Truly, I think we should have won the game. Based off what we'd seen and what was on display, the options, the chances, I think we should have won the game. For once, I would put the game in the maybe we were a little bit unlucky camp. I would, genuinely, hand on heart. I can see where Carragher's coming from, and I genuinely do think this is one of the times where we could say, on another day, we win that 2 or 3-1. But like I said, that's taken this on its own in isolation. But if you look at it in a broader context, it's one of a lot of games that maybe we could have, should have won, but didn't. And that's what I'm finding it very, very difficult to keep accepting. Squad would look so much better with keeping Kwanzaa and Kelleher. So the Kwanzaa thing is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's like he made his mind up like that with Jarell Kwanzaa, wasn't it? Like he comes in, first game of the season, Kwanzaa wasn't winning his duels, so he gets subbed off at half time and then is sparingly used throughout the year. His form isn't great and he's moved on. How, like that, if that isn't an example of a youngster that a manager would be supposed to bring on, because remember, we have a buyback clause in that deal. So seemingly, we still think there's a chance there for Kwanzaa. But our coach, who was handed a centre-back, who the year before looked very confident under Jurgen Klopp, and all of a sudden has flogged him off to Germany and benched him at half-time of the very first game. Now, how does that scream come to Liverpool to be developed as a young player by Arne Slot? And then you've got the Rio Ngamoa stuff. And then you've got his treatment of Chiesa. And then you've got the fallout with Mohamed Salah. So many things that this dude does is setting us back. So what good is it signing all these young centre-backs and great players for the future if they're not going to get a fucking chance? And if you argue that you want that chance to be in the League Cup or the FA Cup, then we got to be going further in those, and Arna can't be throwing away those competitions like you did with the League Cup. Sorry, and the other part, the Kelleher part, yeah, look, I don't have a clue why they didn't feel like Kelleher was worth trusting with the number one spot. I know we will say Alisson Becker's still at the club and Kelleher wanted first team football. I do get that. But ultimately, right now, if I was to honestly sit here and answer, who do I think is a better goalkeeper, Caoimhín Kelleher or Georgi Mamardashvili, I would say Caoimhín Kelleher. They're both good keepers, and I'm not by any means trying to throw away Georgi Mamardashvili. But I don't understand why we had this guy, developed this guy, seen that he'd been tested at the highest level, Champions League games, cup finals, penalty shootouts, and he has the minerals, and he's gone. We didn't want to fight to keep him. Don't understand that. You said disagree. Respectfully, please, if you disagree, give me a reason and not just say disagree. You know, Georgi Mamardashvili could be brilliant. And I totally understand why we signed him. Because 25 million seems like a fair fee. But Kelleher's Premier League proven. And is now at Brentford in an overperforming Brentford. That were talked about as potential relegation candidates this season. So for me, that one I didn't really ever get. Except for Caoimhín wanting first team football. And that Liverpool couldn't give it to. That, understood. Get that. But I can't help but feel there could have been a way we, I don't know, extended and put him out on loan for 2 years somewhere till Alisson's contract was up or whatever. I don't know. I just feel like there could have been a way we could have got Caoimhín enough first team football at a high level and still kept him as a Liverpool player. But look, again, that is what it is. We are where we are. Stevie Boy said, does Mo Salah start at the weekend? So there's so many interesting aspects to this Salah situation that I'm playing over in my mind, Stevie Boy. Like, if he plays at the weekend, is he playing at the weekend because Arna really wants him to play and believes in him? Or is he playing at the weekend because other people are underperforming and since he's left, their forward options have become even more limited? Or is he playing at the weekend because he deserves to play at the weekend? Does he play at the weekend? Yes, I think he does. And I think it's going to be harder to try and justify benching him and keeping Gakpo in a team as an example. Because it's not like since Salah's gone to the AFCON, we've won every single game and played brilliantly. So certainly, it hasn't really moved the needle in either direction because we still haven't lost a game since he's gone to the AFCON either. We've had this really weird 12-game unbeaten run, which is, you know, in itself a weird little summary of our season. Like, we're unbeaten in 12, but it's a shit unbeaten in 12 run with 7 draws, I think, in it. Elliot wasn't good enough for us, mid-table club player. Right. But what we have now is a Federico Chiesa taking 7 million quid a year in wages that Arna doesn't want and doesn't want to play and refuses to play. So Harvey Elliott would at least give us another body if we could get him back in. And like I said, if the plan in the long term still is to sell Elliott, I would argue that 5 to 10 games for Liverpool in the second half of the season would up his value more than freezing his ass off on Aston Villa's bench and not getting any minutes. And I think that will again lead to Liverpool getting less money for that player down the line. So even in that decision, I still don't think it's the right decision. Sorry, lads. And it's not been the most upbeat of streams today, but once I'd had all the conversations and kept hearing the same thing about it really feeling like they're not going to move the needle on the manager during the season, I can't help but say I just feel a little bit down in the dumps about it all. Because it feels like it's going to be tough to get up to look forward to the games. Because like all of us have said, it's been heavy sledding lately and tough. You know, you look forward to the games to some extent because of course it's your club and you love your club, but you're also got that knot in your stomach and your fear factor of what you're about to see on the pitch. Which version of us is going to show up? And even if we do start to play well like we did against Burnley, are we in for a bitter pill at the end of it again? Didn't Joy say they were banking on the money from Elliot for Gay? Yes, he certainly did, my friend. I'd read it out a little bit earlier on, but he said Liverpool had banked on receiving £35 million from Aston Villa for Harvey Elliott in the summer after bending over backwards in arranging the structure for his loan deal. So let's look at that loan deal on its own merit for a second. So Liverpool bent over backwards to get the loan deal done for Harvey Elliott, but at the same time have bent over in a different way that has led to Harvey Elliott being shafted, Liverpool not getting that 35 million quid, and a player going stale and whose value is declining. So even that move, which again we were in control of, we've shit the bed on. I don't think that can be disagreed upon because he's not playing. The 35 million is not guaranteed now because Villa aren't going to trigger the clause and they don't want him. So who's won in that scenario? You know, we're without a player that's still not getting played elsewhere. Yes, maybe we're saving on his wages, fair enough. But you're not getting that 35 million in the summer most likely because his stock will be at a lower ebb. And these are the point I was trying to make is these are the smart guys. Remember, these are the geniuses that remove emotion from the decision making, that have bent over backwards to make that happen. And yet the club still gets fucked over. Someone said I look like Paul McCartney, and then someone said Paul McCartney is a shout. Do you know what's really funny? When I was younger and I used to have like a pudding bowl haircut, one of my particular aunts used to always say that I reminded her of a young Paul McCartney when I was like 13 or 14. So that's why that kind of made me chuckle when I seen somebody say it in the chat. I wish I had his talent, his money, or a lot of other things. Where am I at? Cal. No, Bradley. Sorry, Bradley. Hope you and the family are well, Craig. What's your take on the AFCON final shenanigans? Memorable for all the wrong reasons. So I must say I haven't seen it. I've only seen still images and read the context of it. What I would firstly say is that it only underlines and solidifies what a good damn human being Sadio Mane is. So firstly, well done Sadio for being the voice of sense in that moment and doing the right thing for the reputation of your country and the sport. The situation itself isn't a great look for football. And Brahim Diaz trying to Panenka after that amount of time since Senegal went off the pitch, and then he comes on to take the penalty to win a country a first home AFCON in 50 years, to step up and take that Panenka Do you really want to know what went through my mind? Like, sometimes I know when I'm blunt I can get in trouble, but do you really want to know what I was thinking when I heard that? Apart from the Mane stuff, which I stand over, and again, credit him for that, I thought, that's the fucking Real Madrid arrogance, is what I thought. You know? Who steps up to take a penalty to win their country? A huge, huge tournament. A transformational thing for the country. And goes for a Panenka down the middle. I can't help but feel it was an arrogant thing to do. And it made me kind of chuckle thinking about Madrid and their arrogance and all that the way they carry themselves, and that rubbing off on him has rubbed off on his country. That's how I felt about that. Yeah, that's the same. That's how I felt. You know, I couldn't imagine Steven Gerrard, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Mo Salah, Sadio Mane. Couldn't imagine any of those lads standing up to win a huge tournament for the country for the first time in God knows how many years, and trying a Panenka. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's just that's my take on it. Anyway, you don't have to agree with it, but that is my take on it. But look, like I said, ultimately Sadio Mane, well done, and whatever caused it to get to the point where the Senegal manager felt like he took his players off the pitch, that certainly needs to be, there needs to be repercussions for that and all that went along with that. But yeah, congratulations to Senegal. Well done to Sadio Mane. And yeah, that's that pretty much. Cal said, Craig, I remember all the journals in the summer saying we had 200 million plus FFP wiggle room after Isak, yet we've no money for Gay. They think we're mugs. So there's a difference, Cal, between the ability for us to spend money and the desire for us to spend money. So I have no problem with a club recouping money. Like spending 480, bringing back in 280, so you spend 200 million. I have no problem with any of that. But I do have a problem then with trying to square the circle of, we wanted a player for 35 million. We still wanted him for free, but we wouldn't pay 20 when our need was dire. The only answer to that question for me is cheapness. Because we have the ability to spend the money. You know, the club might feel they might need to move a few things around or shuffle a few things around, but ultimately we decided not to do it. And again, if you're a player that Liverpool are interested in and are saying to hang on, are you going to take their word at that? Because, you know, everyone pointed the finger at Mark Gay and said, oh, well, if he doesn't want to be at Liverpool, we don't want them. Well, how much fucking loyalty did we show him when we wanted him for 35 million in the last day of the window? And then we didn't want him for 20 million when he actually became available. So, you know, how do you square that? And look, people are going to say 300 grand a week. That's got to be the answer from a lot of people. But I still think two things. One, I don't think he would have asked for 300 grand a week to play for us. And two, in the summer, when you're getting him on a free, his wages would have been over 250 anyway. And he'd have got a signing on fee. Because when we were paying 35 million for him, the reported wages then were about 200 grand a week. So, you know, whichever way you dress that up, I just think it comes up with the wrong answer for us. Paddy Worker said, Craig, sorry I've asked 3 times. Name of new coffee machine you bought. Is it the One Touch and your coffee's made? Yes, it's the Samsung EQ500, I believe the machine is called. Samsung EQ500. And yeah, it's a one press thing. It grinds the beans and does everything. See, I'm not one for me frothy coffees, but it does do all of that with one push as well. And there's a nice little app as well that you can do like playlists and stuff on for your coffees. So yeah, Samsung EQ500. And I was fucking delighted with it, mate, because I nearly bought it a while before and ended up getting it almost 200 quid cheaper when I held off. So it was one of those things where I felt like, yes, got lucky there. Mark Doherty said, with defeat on Wednesday, see Slot sacked. I can't keep checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if he's gone. I doubt it, because it still doesn't remove us from the Champions League. Like, whatever happens, we are going to be in a Champions League. Siemens EQ 500. Yep, that's the one. Yeah, whatever happens, we're still going to be in the Champions League. And we're still going to be through to the knockout phase. It's just a matter of, do we have to have the playoff round to get into the knockout phase? Or do we go into the top 8 and avoid that? And a defeat to Marseille would most likely mean the latter. That we wouldn't get into the top 8. And probably make it more difficult as well then when you're going through because, of where you are. So no, I don't think I get him fired. Now getting knocked out of the Champions League in the knockout rounds, that could be a different conversation. Like if we were to go out in the first knockout round again, I find it very hard to see how the fuck you justify keeping him in a job then when you're so far off the league title races, maybe an FA Cup to play for. TV Takeover, how are you, mate? Said, hey Craig, hope you're well. Any new info on Alonso? Not really, other than a few reports that are kind of saying like that he wants a bit of a rest and he'll take a job in the summer. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There is a story about Mickey van de Ven that I want to move on to in a second. But before I do, have a couple of super chats to get through. Was hiding the real engine behind the slot revolution, said the Red King. Look, all we know as fans is that the players really like Johnny Heidinger, that he was well thought of at the AXA, and that there was, according to the reports, a closer connection with him than there was with Arne. So outside of that, I don't know how to say yes or no because I truly don't know the answer. But I know that we're doing worse without them. Whether they're boat related or not, who knows? Because I don't know what Giovanni van Bronckhorst is like. But I do know that Johnny Heidinger was available again and he went to Spurs. That's what we do know. Nessie said, I have a strong feeling that the bigger problem is Edwards and Hughes. Maybe it's just me, but I like how the previous structure of the club more now. I like the previous structure of the club more now. I don't really know how I feel about Hughes as such, because we only have a limited window of time that we've had Richard Hughes at the club. And in that, we've seen a couple of different things. We've seen him get over the line some huge deals. And that absolutely deserves credit. We've also seen him being described as robotic and impersonal by some agents of some former coaches, I think. And then we've got Mr. Michael Edwards, who we don't really know all that much about, other than he's thought of as a very intelligent, clever, wise, data-driven leader. But I'm probably in the middle. So some stuff in the old regime with Klopp, Schmadtke and the way that was done left some gaps and left us in a vulnerable situation with regards to some contract. But in the other way, I think Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards are maybe trying too much too soon. What I don't want to happen, Nessie, is us to have no experience left in the squad. Because Jurgen was a big proponent of saying experience counts for something in football. and in the dressing room, which is why he fought for the Jimmy Milners, the Jordan Hendersons, the contract extensions of those guys. Salah and Mo the same. We're about to lose more experience over the next year or so. Salah will go, Virgil will probably go at the end of their deals. Robbo could go this year. And, you know, it really hit me then, Alisson 2027 as well. It really hit me quite how much of that's it then. Like, they're the pillars. They're the pillars of our success. So then we really are having to take a big leap of faith into Hughes and Edwards at that point, in thinking that they can again go and find the new leaders and the new gems. It's going to be a tough one, you know, but this is why they're supposed to be the smartest guys in the room. I don't see it all coming together now at the minute. I still think we've put ourselves in some stupid positions. But look, the one if I was to say one thing at the club right now that annoys me more than any other, it's centre back for two reasons. One, Canade, I think, is taking the piss, and his lack of being tied down to a new deal, I think, is going to bite us in the arse in a huge, huge way over the next few months. And the second part of the centre-back situation that drives me mad is just the sheer numbers that we don't have. Those two things, I don't think are defendable at all for the club. To have let that happen, and for Canade to be in this position, and for us to be as vulnerable as we are again, I think is weak. You don't have to agree with me, but that's how I feel about that. We all know behind closed doors, Carrot and Stevie both want Arna sacked. Why do they never say it on telly, though? Sellouts, not even a hint about sack. Look, I don't know what it's like to be a former player of a club and still have existing relationships at the club and have to face those people. I don't know what that life is like. But I do know what Cara said in that clip. You've seen, you don't know what I'm talking about. Sack him there, that's a sackable offence. So there is definitely some double speak, for sure. But I guess, again, depends on what you believe. And I don't believe every word that comes out of everyone's mouth with regards to football. I don't. Because, you know, I've been around long enough to see managers, chairmen, football clubs stare at the camera and lie to your face. Because they have to, because this is in the best interest of the club to lie to you. And with pundits on television, I always feel like the ones who get to the top are the ones who play the game and are the company men. And it's ironic that in our industry, the ones that clubs seem to embrace aren't the fan channels that have the most success. Because the ones that have the most success are the ones that are saying the things that the club don't like hearing and are more outspoken, but yet more people gravitate towards those because they feel like that's a truer reflection of their own feelings. Not always agreeing, not always saying you're right, but they know whatever somebody says is coming from the heart, and whether they agree or disagree with it, it's a sincere opinion. Okolo said, would you say Arne Slot's situation is similar to Pep's last season? And if you're a Man City fan, would you be Pep out last season? No, it's not comparable for one main reason. The body of work that Pep has and the success and the eras of it that he's brought to Manchester City. That is a transitional season for a manager in a transitional season, building his own next squad. What we have is a manager who came in, won the league, ripped up the playbook, spent a load of money. Yes, there are some similarities in the fall away, but Arne Slot doesn't have the credit in the bank that Pep Guardiola has. Arne Slot hasn't won 4 titles on the bounce. Arne Slot hasn't delivered the European Cup. So if this was Jurgen, again, we'd be far more understanding of it. Because Jurgen has that credit and would have had that credit. And Arne has some credit for winning the league title. But personally, for me, that credit got used up by the time we got to the Nottingham Forest defeat. So, yeah, that would be the big difference, I would say, between the two situations. Maybe the plan was not to pursue Gay and go for Van de Ven and not chase Semenyo to go for Diamonde. Then why did you bid for Mark Gay in the summer? Why did you continuously say to everybody that you want him at the end of the season on a free if the plan was to go for somebody else? And why haven't you gone for that somebody else? The Semenyo thing I totally understand. Like, that doesn't bother me anywhere near as much as the Mark A situation. I don't necessarily think Antoine Semenyo was the best fit for us as an attacking option, but he would have been a good one. But he wouldn't have been, I think, a no-brainer. Mark Gay was a no-brainer. Like, that was a leader, Premier League proven, perfect age profile, very fair price, just a no-brainer. And on Van de Ven, Facahes, so again, you know what I'm about to say, claimed that Van de Ven has emerged as a potential target for Liverpool, and that Spurs are or Liverpool are ready to submit a €90 million or £78 million bid in an effort to push Spurs into a difficult decision. So if we really wanted Van de Ven, why didn't we sign him when he was at Wolfsburg and George Smatka's son was working at that club and we had an easy get? We could have had Van de Ven. So even if we're going to admit that Van de Ven's the guy, well, then we've done the stupid thing again, which is waiting a bit longer and having to pay a lot more. Let me take you back to Virgil van Dijk signing. When Virgil van Dijk left Celtic and went to Southampton, Gary McAllister phoned up Brendan Rodgers and said to Brendan Rodgers that he should come up and take a look at this guy, Virgil van Dijk, playing for Celtic, because he'd be good enough to come and do it at any club in the Premier League. And for whatever reason you want, we didn't. And he went to Southampton for 12 million quid, I think it was. And then a few years later, we go back and buy the guy for 75 million quid. And we've not learned our lessons on that, apparently. So, again, I struggle to believe that that's the plan, because if Van de Ven was in the thinking, why we could have moved for him earlier. Now, I get that Hughes and Edwards weren't at the club, and it was Schmackett and Klopp then, but I just have seen nothing to indicate that that's likely to happen. And once a player goes to another Premier League club, especially a club like Spurs who feel like there should be a Champions League qualifying club, it's going to be more and more difficult to get that player out and cost you a lot more money. Who do you want? Van de Ven versus Bastoni poll? Yeah, sure. I mean, I can tell you now what the answer will be, but I'm happy to do it for you. So we asked, when should FSG fire Slot? End of the season now, or he should keep his job? And 69% said now. So, even in the conversations we've had with like Nessie and others who think, and I do understand those that say hold fire till the end of the season. I just disagree with it, but I can get the thought process. It seems like most people again think now he should be fired. So let's ask this poll question that the gentleman asked for. Okay, 1 second, dude. Right, so who's better for Liverpool, Bastoni or Van de Ven? We'll let that one run. And I'm thinking it's going to be a landslide. But again, no problem. One worth keeping an eye on, by the way, which is a bit of chatter starting to float around a little bit about, is the Schlotterbeck situation. Now, I'm not really sure how strongly to talk about this, because in one way, Bayern are probably the favourites to sign Nico Schlotterbeck. I wouldn't rule out interest from Spain as well in that scenario, but you certainly couldn't rule Liverpool's name out of the Nico Schlotterbeck situation either, as it has come up in conversation. Yeah, I just don't know if I don't personally have enough information about that I can really feel like I can add to it. Speaking of adding to it, if you can, folks, 2 favours. 1, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. You're very welcome along, and thank you for being with us. And 2, don't forget to drop a like on the stream for me as well. So we did hit the goal for Adam's GoFundMe. Thanks to Brian last night as well. So to everyone that helped make that happen, thank you so much. It'll be hugely appreciated by Adam and his twin brother's family, and of course the lads themselves. Right. So Theo Squires of the Echo posts that Liverpool beat Inter Milan to the signing of Ifeanyi Ndweke, or Ndukwe, who has been tipped to become a truly great centre-back by his manager. But Austria under-18s boss Hermann Stadler has a warning for the youngster, and also admitted his transfer regret. So the warning was that he thinks he probably should have stayed another year in Austria before moving to get a bit more experience. And we also brought in, of course, the young guy from the Senegalese second tier as well. But I don't know. Under Arna, I feel very difficult to expect that these lads are going to break through at any point. And I still, again, we're going out spending 4.5 million here and there for the future. We still want a here and now, need a here and now centre back. Mark said Liverpool had the opportunity to buy Roberto Carlos for 1.5 million before it made it big, but refused. We also had the opportunity to sign Cristiano Ronaldo, but our club didn't want to pay 10 million quid for a teenager. Sean Harding said if Slot goes, Hughes has to go too. He's done his fair share of messing this team up and fumbling deals. Would you take Mane from Wolves? That young lad look, it's a bit early, I think, to say whether I'd take him at Liverpool or not. But my God, he's something about him. I'll give you that one. He definitely has something about him, that kid. He looks exciting. I think staying at Wolves is right for his development anyway. Even if they go to the Championship, if I'm advising him, I'd be telling him to stay at Wolves for another season and keep playing first team football, because it will come. That move will come from, and genuinely, I would say another season staying at Wolves would be the right move for him. And then, hopefully keep progressing in the same direction and get that move a year later. What's going on with Canade's contract situation? Asks Raz. So, I don't know if anybody can give you a definitive 100% answer to that question. But the perceived wisdom seems to be that he's going to leave. I was watching Kave Solokol and Roman Kemp on Friday, and I've seen it in a few others as well, talking about the situation with Mark Gay, and Canade's name came up, and one of the parts of it that they said was that it looks as if he'll be leaving Liverpool in the summer, Canade. And we have heard and seen from many journalists reported that there's a disparity between what Canade thinks he's worth and what Liverpool thinks he's worth. And at this point, if someone's going to back down in this scenario, it will most likely be Liverpool, because Canade knows he can walk out the door and probably join, 50 clubs. Now, will they be at the level of Liverpool? Maybe not, but they might be willing to give him the money he wants. And maybe he does get to a club like a Bayern or Real Madrid or a Paris Saint-Germain on a free. I don't know. But I know if Liverpool are to keep him now, they're probably going to have to pay money wage-wise they're not comfortable with and that he's probably not worth. So we've, again, left ourselves exposed in this situation with one of our only 2 real centre-back options leaving in a few months and going through the motions a bit and making mistakes all over the shop. Mutt said we beat Arsenal 7-0 in the under-21s. Rob Page playing the Liverpool way. Nice to see for a change. Memories. Yeah, that was a tremendous result. And there is some talent there again, like I said. Will Wright brought in, and some others in Rob Page's squad. But you know, first team is where our focus is at right now. And if any young players can come through in the future, great. But I'm not holding my breath that it'll be Arnold that brings them through. Craig, have you Phillips Hue Gradient light for the studio? If you don't know what I'm talking about, look into them. I do know what you're talking about, but I don't really want to go in to technical details on the studio yet, if that's okay, because I want some things to be a surprise to everyone. I did give a little sneak peek to our Discord earlier on of a 30-second walkthrough of it, but yeah, look, let's just say we've got the right man for the job with regards to the lighting and stuff like that. This guy knows what he's doing. Why did they let players just walk out the door? Shocking. I really don't know the answer to that one, because you would imagine getting a few bob for a player is better than letting them walk out the door for nothing. And like if Canade goes, like let's just say Canade leaves in the summer, right? Even if everything goes tickety-boo for the rest of the season, if Canade leaves in the summer, we've got Virgil van Dijk and Giovanni Leone. So both at either end of the centre-back spectrum age-wise, one at the end, one at the beginning. Gomez, who was going to go and nearly went to AC Milan at the end of the window. How many centre-backs are we going to have to bring in this summer? It's a minimum of 2. And if you've got a manager, a head coach that comes in that wants to play with 3, then you're probably talking about 3 centre-backs needed. And then a defensive midfielder. And then at least 1 attacker. That's 5 changes already. Before we talk about maybe needing to replace Andy Robertson. And some of the murmurings are that Costas might come back in to replace Andy Robertson. And is that really an upgrade? No. And his contract's also up in 2027. So that one feels odd as well. So we're probably looking at 6 changes again next summer. So does that mean we're going to have to listen to the excuses of too many changes being the reason for the squad being disjointed again? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, lads. I'm finding it difficult at the moment to feel optimistic. Other than I do know that Liverpool have some damn good footballers at the club. You know, and that's what makes it more egregious that we are where we are. Paul Joy said it seems likely that Federico Chiesa departs Liverpool at the end of the season. So there's the admittance that he's not wanted at the club. So why have we gone through 2 years of this with Chiesa? Truthfully, for a club that's supposed to be smart and clever, how have we gone through 2 years of a player being at a club that the manager clearly doesn't want to play, and that would have cost us 14 million in wages, 12.5 million in a transfer fee, tax, VAT, agents' fees, signing on fee, and other bits and pieces? How is that clever? It's just... It feels like we don't learn our fucking lessons. He should have been sold in the summer. But maybe we asked for too much. Maybe the right move wasn't there. I don't know. But I do know it was clear that Arne doesn't want to use him. So why are we taking up a squad place? Remember, he didn't even have a Champions League spot until a change. It's just, this isn't the decision making of super intelligent people like we're supposed to believe these people are. If we sell Chiesa, who do you expect to come in? In the summer? I don't know. Because I don't know what manager we're looking at. And I don't know what style we're going to be looking to play. So, again, I've talked about the head of football being, you know, or Richard Hughes being the guy who sets the footballing philosophy as the sporting director. So, I don't know what his philosophy is going to be moving forward. Will they change to a coach that maybe goes with a back 3, or will Arna get fired and we move in somebody else that wants to play with some variation of a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-2-2. I don't know. So again, it's hard to know who the target would be when we don't know what the future of the manager is going to be or the style we're going to be playing is going to be. Look, here's what I think is going to happen. And I have to say think because I am guessing. I think there will be back channeling done to Xavi Alonso. I think that there will be a wink and a nod and he will start the homework to start looking over the lay of the land, the squad, the future, who he may want, and what transfer business he'd like to see conducted. And then, unless Arna absolutely pulls a Hail Mary out, he's gone and you bring in Alonso. That's my guess at how this works out. So, the, I think, sporting director of Red Bull talking about Jan Diamonde and his future said, as a chairman of the supervisory board of Red Bull, I would say that he will still be here or there next season. And even if an offer of 80 or 90 million euro comes in, they reckon Jan Diamonde will still be at Sporting next season. Again, these are just words, so let's see what happens in the actual state of play. So, there's one thing I haven't had a chance to talk about yet that I did mention at the start of the stream, and that was about a situation with Cody Gakpo and him coming in for a bit of flack. Bear with me as I read this out. And again, this came from the Echo. They say, former FIFA referee Keith Hackett believes the FA should actually investigate Cody Gakpo and even suspend the Liverpool striker following his alleged dive to earn a penalty against Burnley. Goes on to say that Hackett is now taking things a step further, arguing that a panel should be established to ban players for incidents of simulation. The former PGMOL chief told Football Insider, this is a dive. It's not a very good one. No way that's a penalty. And it's not even a clever one. When you start to question the match official and what he's seen, or excuse me, next you really start to question the match official and what he's seen and also what VAR are doing to allow them to get to that decision. Fuck off, quite frankly. Do you ever notice that Hackett always has something to say that's extremely sensationalist and headline grabbing? Where was all this action when you were the chief of the PGMOL, Keith? You know, where was all this shit that you're rabbiting on about now, but you didn't do it though when you were at the head of the PGMOL, did you? So, how about shutting the fuck up on telling everyone now that it was a dive or it wasn't a dive? Because ultimately, we had VAR shoved down our throats. The officials have a chance to look at it from various angles, and they make their decisions. Now, I'm not saying the decision's right or wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't inconsistencies. But there are far bigger problems in the game that we should be looking at than having to give him fucking airtime for Gakpo was a dive and it should be investigated. I mean, Jesus Christ, mate, come on. How about some of the absolutely inconsistent decision making on the likes of Xavi Simons getting a red card for something, but yeah, somebody else getting away with it? How Diogo Dalot not get sent off for a knee-high studs-up challenge on somebody? And again, I'm not trying to pick on United there. I'm just saying there's so many other things that are inconsistent with refereeing at the minute that fans would like to see consistent, and having that type of stuff doesn't help. I don't think we're even delaying on Alonso. He wants a reset and don't want to make his kids move mid-term. And again, that's fine. But don't pretend otherwise, you know? You know, if we know we're going to go for Alonso and he's a guy that's coming in, then what? Like, one, if we're a club that do things respectfully in the right way, right? Remember, the Liverpool way. So, in one way, we're supposed to believe that the club have Aaron has the full backing of the club and there's no chance of changing them at this, or no thoughts of changing them at this time. Then there's another aspect where we talk about Alonso being the guy they want, but Alonso not wanting to move mid-season, and that Liverpool maybe being happy about that, and then we'll go get him in the summer. How is that treating Arna with respect? That you're basically just putting him in as a placeholder until the guy you actually want is available. Because he's not tick. He's going to know this. He's going to hear the same back channeling and, murmurings that we all see and hear. So, again, you're not exactly having a manager there who's going to be inspiring players with his words where they know that his future is limited anyway. So, where's the Liverpool way in that? This is what I keep saying. Like, this Liverpool way thing is mythical at times, and I just don't. It winds me up because it's usually a reason to do the nice guy thing and not the actual right thing. And if Arna starts to hear that Alonso's been measured up for his suit, like, how do you think that's going to go down with him? 1 second. So, Anfield Index and Eddie Gibbs said, today, I've written at length about Arne Slot, Liverpool, respect, responsibility, and where we are. This isn't abuse, this isn't nostalgia, this isn't denial. He said, my expectation is that Slot will see out this season. Beyond that, I do not see a renewal. The club will present it softly, pay respect, express gratitude, and then move on. And I would say Eddie is absolutely spot on. And again, respect to the guys at Anfield Index who, as you know, I hold in the highest of esteem. And I think Eddie's spot on. And like I said, backs what I'm hearing myself. And I as I said, I had a conversation behind the scenes with people today. Anfield Index guys being one of them, other people, and that's kind of that's what's out there. That's the lay of the land. So I find it a bit condescending that we talk about the Liverpool way, where we all know we're treading water and Arna's on the way out the door in the summer anyway. So, who's the nice guy in that? If Alonso wasn't available, who would you want to go for instead? Just asking in case Alonso negotiations break down. Look, Alonso isn't my number one choice. Let me make that very clear. Luis Enrique would be my number one choice. Xavi Alonso would be a very, very good choice as well, and certainly will be right up there for me. But if you're talking about who I think will be the best fit, I would say it's Enrique, because that brand of football is one that, we like, we can get behind, and I think we have the players for. With Alonso, I think we're closer to being able to play in his system than we would have been when we appointed Arne Slot. And I've mentioned this a few times throughout the year that, inadvertently or not, I think that bringing in the likes of Wirtz, Frimpong, having Kirkes, you could easily see a world where Frimpong, Kirkes, Bradley or Robertson can play in a wing-back role. You would absolutely see that without too much thought. And then you go to the other ways of the system and you could absolutely see Wirtz in the 10. So in some ways, I think we're closer to a system that might play with 3 at the back if we needed to go in that direction than we were before. Craig, do you think last season was Slot's tactics or individual brilliance? I think it was a culmination of Jurgen's work, Arne Slot and Ruben Peters' ability to keep the guys fit and available, and us being the most consistent. That's what I would say led to the title last year. Some of it, yes, it was the players that Klopp had brought in, and again, a good follow-on from the year before. Salah having an unbelievable season. But also, I keep trying to defend Arne for this part, I do feel that himself and Ruben Peters keeping players fitter and available for longer was a big part of what got us over the line, and was maybe the difference between the drastic injuries and fall off the year before with Jurgen versus how we were able to get over the line with Arne. So, yeah, that's where my head's always been at with that. I'm Serious One said we played Arna's version of Klopp's style and team. That's probably spot on, mate. Yeah. And then this season, somehow things have changed, and we've gone so far away from that, which is what makes it really confusing. Well, Gakpo's injured, 1-4, came back, drawn 4, 1-1, said Frozen 007. Greg, how are we, Greg? And thank you, Greg, for being a member with us. At 25 wins and 53 matches, not good enough in a year. Greg, I agree. No argument for me on that one, bro. It's and again, the most calendar year losses for any Liverpool manager. Look, I can go through all the numbers, mate, and they all don't shine very brightly on Arna. Lost back to back to back by 3 goals. 7 draws from 12. It's just record after records have been broken for the wrong reasons, and you know, it's why I feel so dispirited tonight, is because it doesn't feel like this is getting close to a resolution, unfortunately. Oh, cool. My wife just messaged me a picture to say Northern Lights over the shed, which is what she calls the office. So yes, the Northern Lights are visible in parts of Ireland tonight. If you're out, get a chance, have a look. Yeah, it's quite cool. I'll show you the picture. Oh, one sec. There you can see. How cool is that? It's pretty cool. Have you any regrets on your road to 1 million subs? Any changes? Twitch? Any regrets? Yeah, of course. There's always going to be regrets in life, mate. Do I have any regrets? I think I certainly could have limited my ability to be baited. I think I could have done some of the things I've done to protect myself emotionally at an earlier stage. I could have. Well, yeah, there's always things like situations you look back on and go, could I have done this differently? Um, but I don't think there's too much I change, in all honesty, because I feel like I'm a better human being than I am now than I was when we started. I feel like I'm a better husband, a better father. I feel like I'm a more balanced human being all around. And I put that down to our community, you know, helping develop me into the person that I'm more proud to look in the mirror and look at. You know, even though I'm still don't like what I see in the mirror, but that's, you know, that's a lack of self esteem from my own side. But you know, I think I'm good. The big thing that's going to be a huge change for me is the moving away from green screen somewhat to less usage of green screen when we go into the studio. That's going to be a huge change. Um, yeah, that's going to be a huge change. What are things you don't regret in life? You don't want the answers to that because it's not PC. So let's just say between the ages of 17 and 21, 22, whilst I was going through a very difficult time at home with my mum and my dad and the alcoholism and all the other stuff that went along with it, I partook in escapism that I don't regret. I certainly don't regret asking my wife to marry me. That was probably the best decision I've made. And I'm glad I didn't quit when I nearly did about 5 or 6 years ago when this channel was in its infancy, and the trolling was getting a bit much and people were going in on me a lot. I'm glad I didn't quit. So yeah, those things probably. Oh, and I don't regret getting the snip, because that's made life a lot easier. Not having to worry about any potential any more little Houldens. Yeah, let's say. Right, ladies and gents, I'm going to head off and I will see you guys tomorrow. Connor will be up with a video at 10 a.m. The preview is already out, so if you do get a chance, go and check that one out. And yeah, appreciate you coming in again tonight. Hopefully, tomorrow we have a better stream and more positive stuff to talk about. But don't forget, Reds in action again Wednesday. We'll be starting from 6:45 to take you through the game. Appreciate you all. If you can hit that like button for me before you head off, really would mean a lot. And again, I will talk to you tomorrow.